please come up and I will introduce you as we go along. So my name is Jenni Nordborg and I work for LIF, which is the Research-Based Pharma Association. So what I do for a living is lobbying, and that is why it's great opportunity for me to be here today and get sort of this market feeling for where we are now. So we see the panel, they're all here greeting each other, and we will now greet you. So Ester Sklarsky from Sound Bioventures, you're a principal there. Oskar Bosson, you are from BioArctic, where you're Vice President for Investor Relations and Communications. And Kristofer Klerfalk, you are the founder and manager and everything from Life Science Investors also. Most welcome to the panel. Give them a big applaud. So, and we have now about 25 minutes for this panel discussion. I will head off with some questions to the panels, but please you also use the time at the end. You will be able to ask questions and pick their great ideas. So just get some insights on where we are now. So it's really a big issue to unlock the global investment panel capacity, and how do we make Swedish biotechs attractive? Esther, I think that we should start with you, really to see where are we now in the market from the venture capital perspective. You are investing in early stage or clinical stage, and to set the scene, are we just where it's darkest before the dawn? Please, Esther.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think very interesting question. I think the private markets.
The mic on?
Is it on? Do you hear me? Yeah.
Mm.
I think the private markets is a bit different from the public markets. The public markets is still looking pretty dark. We see some light in the end of the tunnel. Yeah, but if you look at the private markets in terms of venture investing, we're not at the levels during the pandemic, during the biotech frenzy, but we're definitely above levels pre-pandemic. So we are seeing a growth in the market. So I think, to me, that signals some kind of healthy discipline among investors. We're not running after a hype, but there's plenty of money in the system. We have seen major funds being raised, both in US, but also here in Europe. I think we've never seen these big funds that we have today, like EQT Health, we have Sofinnova, we have Forbion. So there's plenty of money in the system. But venture investors are picky, I would say, and we are definitely investing more into the clinical stage. So if you're an early stage biotech, it's still hard to attract venture funding.
And you have been able to be a little bit picky. This sort of the change of the time, is that something that you have seen over the last year or just over the last months?
No, I think definitely post-pandemic, I mean, valuations have gone down. So as a venture investor, it's been a pretty good market to... So we started the fund just end of 2021. So coming into 2022 and 2023, it's been a good investment period for us because the valuations have come down. So yeah.
Time is everything, so that's great. Kristofer, over to you. You have been an angel investor in this business for over 20 years, so you've seen some ups and downs. Where are we now on sort of on the angel and very early stage?
Maybe 10 years as an angel. So Life Science Invest is sort of a network where we've gathered about 100 angels investing together, and we evaluate around 1,000 companies each year, and out of them we select maybe 8 to 10 to invest in. And what we see now is that to close the rounds is sort of lagging. So the rounds that we were participating in this spring closed sort of mid-July, start of August. And these are the sort of what we think is the best companies out of those 1,000. So if those sort of early stage brilliant companies have trouble closing rounds, then it's still sort of chill out there. And what we are waiting for is sort of to get a really good collaboration in the cap table. But we'll come to that later, maybe.
Yes, but I mean, on a following question is that sort of have you seen this when we've been through the sort of difficult to close round before? Has it been different now, or?
I think it's been sort of more and more difficult, but we, as Ester mentioned, we see some sort of macro signs now that it's sort of the big pharma has a huge amount of money to invest, and there has never been this much money available for biotech before, and the money has to work as well. So it could just not sit in the funds. So at some point it needs to sort of open up, and when it does, it spreads from the top and down. So we have some lag in our sort of investments in the really early ones. Yeah.
And even Kristofer, if you have been going on for 10 years, a company that has been going on for way over 20 years is BioArctic, but we've seen sort of the big interest and keep through the breakthroughs over even the last years. But what is the situation for you right now?
Well, so it's true. I want to come to that question, but I had a question to Ester actually, because when I listened to you, one of the things I heard, I was at a Morgan Stanley conference, I think it was last week, and what we heard then regarding macro and the environment is that one of the problems have also been that some of the companies that early on that need to raise funds can't get funds because there are so few IPOs, or have been few IPOs, so the investors can't get offset of the money, right? They can't IPO the company, so therefore they need to keep the funds in those companies, wait for the IPOs, and then there'll be more funds also for earlier stage companies. So maybe you can comment on that later. And then when it comes to our situation at BioArctic, I mean, we're in a very fortunate position, having had partners from early on when we started in 2003 with Eisai, Japanese company, who's helped us through milestones, etc., of several or way over 100 million euros, and then also AbbVie that we partnered with for 6 years that gave us an additional billion euros. So we have actually not had to take in any money. Obviously, at the IPO, we did take in some money, but our we still have a cash position. I think it was end of Q2, almost 900 million SEK. So that's a good position to be in. But we're also now moving into a new type of difficulty, because obviously we have the success of the first product and it's now starting to attract more and more revenue for us. But as that happens, we have an earlier pipeline that we need to invest in to become successful continuously, not just be a one-trick pony, right? And that could be difficult, and that could be something that would need funds over time before we start getting the big royalties in a few years, right? So, but we're seeing also with the success that we have had, we've had issues also when we talk, because one of the things then we want to attract more U.S. capital, right? Our ownership base is 90% Nordic and then maybe 5% U.S. or so, and we obviously want to grow that over time. But we were at JP Morgan last year, and the investors we were meeting were saying, yeah, you're an interesting company, but you've already had the big success with the first company, right? So there's no big inflection point we see. Maybe a mutual fund could be interested now because they can go in and take a long shot and hope that the sales take off, and they can, we can be a dividend king or whatever. But being an investor, biotech investor, they want to have like inflection points, right? It's like a binary point where the share price, like when we had the data, went up 172% on the day. And we're not that company anymore. So for us, we're sort of an in-between company, right? We're not for the biotech investors, and we're not yet for the mutual funds maybe, because they want to see a bit more sales before they start investing, right? So I think that if we wanted to take in capital now, even with the success, it would be quite difficult because we would be in between.
We'll come back to that. But Ester, did you want to respond to the question from Oskar?
I think it's true. I mean, when the public markets are muted, the private investors have to stay longer with their companies, and they have to stay on through the clinical phase where you prior or before could go out in the public markets. But I think there's multiple reasons for why the private investors are looking at the clinical stage companies. I think also in uncertain times, you look for security, or you try to avoid risks, avoiding the preclinical risk and going into the clinical stage companies during uncertain times. I think a lot of private investors find attractive. But I do think when the public markets open up again, you will see more private investors going back to the preclinical companies.
Kristofer, you wanted to
Yeah, and the angel perspective is that we have now put in quite some bridge rounds and so on, and at some point the angel capital needs to come back to us. So to have a healthy ecosystem, there has to be money in the angels' pockets as well. Yeah.
And I wanted to turn to the sort of the second part of the line of the panel. It's really what Sweden has to offer. And I'll turn that question also to you, Ester. So in your portfolio, do you have any Swedish companies?
No, we don't. And I think it's partly or mainly because we've been very picky in terms of we look for companies that are just about to be clinical or clinical stage. And unfortunately, we don't invest in public companies. And the Swedish market is a bit different to many other markets in the terms that many companies have IPO'd and relatively early. So we do see a lot of great science, early stage companies, but they've essentially been too early for us. And the clinical stage companies, many of them are on the public markets.
So the companies, and as I understand, Sound is not from the Sound, it's from the Sund, right? Yes. So you work also a lot on the Danish side of the Sund, and there's the sort of the IPO market is totally different. But that's a good thing then, in your perspective. But Oskar, from your side, you're saying now you have to turn to other investor relations, or is that because you're not the sort of first runner-up in your portfolio? Are you looking to are you choosing other investor relations, or what are sort of your key messages to the investors?
No, well, we want everybody to invest in us, obviously. I think we're worth it. I think there's still several good inflection points left, although the big one has happened. I think as sales takes off, as we get approval in more markets, as we're entering the clinic now with a phase 2A program, we're going to start in a couple of years, we're going to have additional Alzheimer programs for the next generation of drugs coming in. We have a brain transport technology that will sell itself to companies in markets where we're not, like cancer and MS and epilepsy, where we can help them bring their drugs to the brain. So I think there are several good things still to come from BioArctic, and that's definitely our goal. So I think it's more of looking to a broader investor base than just shifting from one to another for us.
Is that also a way of looking, so how do we make the Swedish biotech scene really attractive for investment? Is that also sort of having the broader perspective, having new partnerships, working in new ways? What do you think, Kristofer?
I think we have world-class innovations, and that's, clear. But sometimes the companies are not perfectly rigged. And we are really picky. So you have to have sort of the right cap table from the beginning. You have to have the right management on place. And we have had a tradition of really early IPOs, and that has sort of spread the butter on too little bread, or too little butter on too much bread. So what we could benefit is some kind of consolidation on the market where the entrepreneurial sort of brilliance is sort of allocated to fewer companies and not just running to IPOs. That would benefit a lot, don't you think?
How do you work with that?
Yes.
Okay.
How do you work with that, Ester? I mean, sort of what on the partnership side, what do you really want? How do you get what you really want to invest in?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still struggling with that. Otherwise, we would have made a Swedish investment, because, of course, we're present here. We invest across Europe and US, I should say. So we see thousands of companies, and I think that's what makes it hard. That you really need to stand out. I mean, the competition, if you want to get global capital, is massive compared to getting Swedish capital in Sweden. So I think the companies need to realize that, and we Swedes tend to be quite modest in the way we communicate, and we always say data talks in this industry, but to be honest, like if you want to get the attention from investors, you need outstanding data, but you need to put the data into some kind of context. You need to really sell the data, and I think we need to be greater visionaries and greater storytellers to really catch the interest. And what I hear from my investor friends outside of Sweden is they do find Sweden interesting. They know about the Karolinska Institute, they know about the pharma legacy, but they don't really come and scout here. So companies need to really go out and look for the capital. The capital is not really coming here by its own.
Oskar, Kristofer, and then it's you. So if anyone wants to say something or ask a question, please raise your hands.
I'll try to be brief. They said so many good things, but I want to comment on them. So one is on the management side, or sort of enriching companies to have maybe better structures and pull attraction that way. And I think that's a legacy issue now in Sweden, because we have a lot of great early on ideas. But being that Pharmacia left and Astra left and moved out of the country, a lot of that knowledge about how to actually make a pharma company successful has disappeared from Sweden. So we're in a phase, if you compare it to Denmark, for example, which has Novo Nordisk and the whole environment around that, it's a different plate, right? They've got much more talent to choose from locally. We sometimes have to bring in talent internationally. We've been very successful there because of connections. So we have a lot of former Astra, former Roche, Denali, etc., but those have been Swedes living abroad and wanting to move back to Sweden, and then coming to us asking to come in. So I think that's a clear thing. We need to think about how to build that knowledge base in Sweden over time. So I think we need to have a couple of larger farmers or mid-sized farmers that actually stay in the market, don't get sold out to larger companies. Partner up instead, make partnerships. And that's the second thing I wanted to mention. And that's one thing that's made us successful in raising capital early on, has been partnerships. Not only, obviously, ASI came in early and funded us with milestones, etc., but also when we went public, some of the investors that also had ASI chose to invest in us too, like Wellington, for example, took a large stake in our company early on, and being international. So I think that's also a thing. If you have partnerships, use those partnerships to see if there are investors there that you can reach out to and see if they want to take like a single bet or just part of that investment in your company.
Thank you, Kristofer.
Yeah, and also we have some examples where we have been spoon-feeding companies for 15 years without sort of any takeoff. And in the US, that would never happen. Then you just pull the plug much earlier on and free that competence out for other innovations. And I think that's something we have to learn from and not be that sort of Swedish nice guys. That, oh yeah, we will help you a few years more. Maybe it will take off. Maybe you could do some major changes then.
That makes you think also, how bad is the bad market, or does it sort of also do you really find the golden eyes in the sun pot? But a lot of values, of course, get lost in this period. We have a question.
Oh. Well, sorry, it been another question. It was more comments. And right. I'm from a Danish company, and what I see is very interesting in the Swedish environment is really that you have a completely different investor sentiment here. And there are many more private investors, there are many more, say, mid-size public institutions, etc., that are willing to invest in high-risk biotech companies. And that's something we envy from the Danish side, I would say. But then the problem is, and I think that's also remarked up there, is that there's probably a little too little quality assurance. So if you can combine these two, that you can actually benefit on this very large and willingness to invest, and at the same time kind of have more realistic scenarios, more solid ground, I think you have a really, really good basis for generating major biotech companies. And I think there are also some good examples. I would like to mention one thing with BioArctic. This company is totally unknown. And why is that? Because you have not, I think, been able to tell the story. So I had to tell people in Denmark that this Alzheimer's product was actually not from a Japanese company, but from a Swedish company. Oh, but this cannot be true, they said. Okay, so there's something to do here to get out and promote things more.
Communication. Thank you very much. And if there are any other issues or that you want to raise from, or if you have a question to the panel, please do so. And I think that on your point, I mean, we always say that Swedes are very risk-aware, but we are I think, on the top level globally of actually taking risk in financials. Swedes are the ones that have most investments. I mean, if you look on a general public, we're the ones that do most investments on the stock market as a whole, and we have a lot of the angel investments, and we have a lot of the venture capital investments, and we probably have a few competences too, even that we should speak more of. But so moving into sort of finalizing on the last 5 minutes. So what are we looking at ahead? What's sort of the next fund year? What have we done 2 years from now to really have attracted new global players in investments on this scene? Ester, you seemed eager, so please start.
No, I think there are great times ahead. I think, of course, nobody missed out on Calliditas. And I mean, we need those kinds of successes in the Swedish market, both in terms of gaining confidence, but also for the experience. Just having experienced management teams that have done it before and people who have worked with those management teams, it kind of provides the ripple effect that is needed, because the global investors are looking for management teams that have the experience and have done it before. If you've been a part of a successful exit, that gives you so much greater chance of actually attracting capital. So I think there are great times ahead.
Apart from teams, is there anything in particular that you are looking for right now?
In terms of investments? No, I think, the fundamentals in biotech investing will stay the same. I mean, we look for, of course, great science and assets that will address significant unmet medical needs, and where there is a commercial case, of course, as well. And I think as a company, if you can align with the pharma interests as early on as possible, of course, that will also give you much greater chances of success, because we, of course, constantly talk to the BD teams around the globe. And, of course, we do tend to invest in areas where we see there's an interest from pharma.
Oskar, in your view, what can we do even more to unlock the global potential?
No, I think partly is that we're going to be helped by macro as well, because you see the interest rates coming down now, and that also offers an opportunity to, it could be more interesting to invest in early on projects compared to just having them in bonds or something like that. So I think that's also going to help in the coming years. But it's always keep working on your ideas and make sure you have an attractive offering to sell. It's not going to sell itself, and be sure you're out there and talking about it in different forums like these or others, and sell.
And Kristofer, you get to close. So what will we see from the angel side over the next 2 years? What are you really?
I think there are a couple of keys. One is to fill the Nordic funds with US capital. Some of our funds in the Nordics are successful there, and we need to increase that, because that's a safer way for the American capital to work here, because it's harder for them to go in and do a direct investment. So that's one thing, I think. And then the exits in the Nordic region is much, to a lesser extent, reinvested in the ecosystem. So when we do an exit in the Northern Europe, we save the money somewhere else. But in the US, they sort of put it into work in the ecosystem again. So that's something we need to do. And then also government can steer capital over to the life science sector. And France and Germany and UK has done sort of routes like that. And not just saying we put in, we're adding more money in a satsning, in one sort of, this is 100 million, boom. Change the sort of track so that it's easier for the pension funds, the institutional capital, the insurance funds to do investments in life science. And that could be regulatory work and so on. So making it easier. And then also sort of we have to step up and be better at promoting the companies we have here, as Ester mentioned as well. Because when I share a deal to a US angel investor, they look at it and say, "This is so low valuation. What have you done?" It lacks 1-0 in the end in the valuation. It would take us sort of we don't believe in this, and that's something we have to sort of bridge over. Yeah.
So we close with these go big words, and thank you, the panel, very much with the big hand. Thank you.